بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah bless our lesson, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease our understanding and bless us with tawfiq and hidayah, bless us with iman and taqwa, and protect us from all difficulties, trials and tribulations in dunya and akhir. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open for us doors of understanding and doors of guidance, and guide us our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam yawm al-qiyamah. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. So inshallah we will begin with the book Muqaddimat, Al-Muqaddimat. The book Al-Muqaddimat is written by Al-Imam Sanusi, and Al-Imam Sanusi, and as we can see here, and his name is Muhammad bin Yusuf Sanusi Al-Tilmisani, Tilmisan. And he was born in the city that is known as Tilmisan, and this city is in Algeria, in Jazair. So he is known as Al-Tilmisani, Al-Imam Muhammad bin Yusuf Al-Tilmisani As-Sanusi. As-Sanusi, the word Sanusi goes back to the tribe of Al-Imam Sanusi. It goes back to the tribe of Al-Imam As-Sanusi. So sometimes our scholars they have certain names. Sometimes the names goes back to the qabila, to the tribe. Sometimes the names goes back into the country, and so on and so forth. So Al-Imam Sanusi, he was a scholar of Islam, and especially in the field of Al-Aqidah. And he wrote many books, and he lived in the 9th century of Hijriya. So he was born around the year 825 in Hijriya, and he passed away in the year 895. So he is considered to be the early scholars, earlier than Al-Imam Ahmad al-Dardir, which we studied about, earlier than Al-Imam al-Laqani, the author of Jawhar al-Tawheed. So he is earlier than most of the later scholars. So in the books of Aqidah, he wrote a few books that until today we find it is studied and learned in the Muslim world. So for example, he has a book which he named as Asura, that is known as Barahin, and before that he wrote Asura, and before that he has Hafida, and then the Muqaddimat. So this Muqaddimat is considered to be the book that speaks about certain terminologies used in the field of Aqidah. Certain terminologies used in the field of Aqidah. So the reason why this book is selected, because I feel that since most of you have already studied, or all of you who have already studied in the Kharidah Bahiyya, it is important to take note of some of the important terminologies. Many of the terminologies we have gone through at a certain extent in the class of Kharidah Bahiyya. Certain things that it is not mentioned, but certainly learning this Muqaddimat, this particular book of Imam Sanusi, it will help us in understanding the other books of Aqidah. So it is basically a book that speaks about certain important principles. So inshallah we will begin with the book, and I gave this PDF. I gave this PDF to all of you. So it is in the Arabic language. I hope that we are able to translate into English, because I cannot find any English translation in the net. So inshallah ta'ala, we begin by tawfiq of Allah. So he mentioned, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Qala Shaykh al-Imam al-Alim al-Allama al-Muhaqqiq Abu Abdullah Muhammad al-Sanusi al-Hasani. Al-Imam Sanusi also a Hasani. Hasani here meaning he goes back to the lineage of Sayyidina Hassan bin Ali, which is the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is a Sayyid, and in a sense, in the Morocco area, in the Algeria area, when there is a Sayyid, and they call him a Sharif. So there is a slight difference than what we see in our area. So this is the meaning of Al-Hasani. So he began by saying Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will not speak a lot about this Muqaddimat, about Basmala, Hamdallah. I believe most of you have known the meaning of Basmala, the meaning of Hamdallah. I want to make it straight and to enter into the text itself, because our time is limited. I hope that we can finish this before the exams, and hopefully we can complete the whole text of this Muqaddimat. So the word Muqaddimat is basically introductions. And as what I mentioned, Imam Sanusi, he is introducing any terminologies in this particular field of Al-Aqidah. So he said, Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he began by saying, Al-Hukmu isbatu amrin aw nafyuhu. He began to define the word Al-Hukmu. What is the meaning of Al-Hukm? Al-Hukm. So the meaning, he say, Isbatu amrin aw nafyuhu. So in the Arabic language, when we say Hukum, like in Malay also we have the word Hukum. Hukum sesuatu perkara. Al-Hukum in the Arabic language, Isbatu amrin, establishing a particular thing. To establish something. To affirm. Or we use a better word, we say to affirm something. So when you affirm something, you give a hukum to it. When you affirm something, you give a hukum to it. So for example, you say Zaid is standing. This is a hukum. Zaid is standing, because you are affirming and you are ascribing the action of standing to Zaid. So this is the meaning of isbatu amrin. Aw nafyuhu, or you you reject something. You do nafi. You say Zaid is not standing. Zaid is not standing. So you are saying, you are negating afwan. You are, the word here, better word is negating. You are negating that Zaid is standing. So this is also a hukum. So a hukum isbatu amrin aw nafyuhu. So whether we are speaking about establishing a particular ruling, or we are negating something. So this is the meaning of hukum in the Arabic language. And then the author goes on to speak about the word hukum in the Islamic perspective, and he said وَيَنْقَسِمُ إِلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَقْسَامٍ. Hukum is divided into three types, and he said, this is where he mentioned, number one, we have hukum shar'i. As we can see here, hukum shar'i, number two, hukum adi, and number three, hukum aqli. So he gave this sequence that we will talk about. And he will begin speaking about the meaning of hukum shar'i, and then hukum adi, and then hukum aqli. So when we say hukum shar'i, this is where he mentioned فَالشَّرْعِيُّ. But before I go to the definition, in the translation or the words that we always use in our society, we say, if in Malay we say hukum shara. In English we call it the Sharia law. Nowadays a lot of people are speaking about Sharia law, and the West has a very bad misinterpretation of the word Sharia law. When they speak about Sharia law, it's always negative. What we hear in the media when it comes into Sharia law, you will see any images of people cutting hands, or people speaking about to stone others, and so on and so forth. So when we speak about Sharia law, it goes back into hukum shari actually. In Arabic, and we call it hukum shari. This is the meaning of Sharia law. This is where the word in Sharia law comes from in the Arabic text and in the Islamic perspective. So it is important for us to understand what is the definition of Sharia law. Or in Malay we say hukum syara. Apa itu hukum syara? So this is the definition. And this definition we can find in books of fiqh, we can find in books of usulul fiqh. Those who are studying what you call usulul fiqh will be easy for them to understand this, because this is one of the main things that we study in the beginning of usulul fiqh. So he mentioned فَشَرْعِيُّ حُكْمُ الشَّرْعِيُّ, and he said هو خِطَابُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى الْمُتَعَلِّقُ بِأَفْعَالِ الْمُكَلَّفِينَ. So hukum shari, you say it is khitabullah. The meaning of khitabullah, it is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have learned in Aqidah, one of the sifat ma'ani, attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is al-kalam. And al-kalam is sifatun azaliyatun nafsiyatun laysat biharfin wala sawt tadullu ala jami'il ma'lumat. Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a pre-eternal attribute that is nafsiyah, kalam nafsi. So it is not made of letters and words. So here the meaning of khitabullah, it has a relation before we studied in Aqidah, when we study about the word upon the attribute of al-kalam. So it is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has a relation bi af'alil mukallafin, with the actions of the mukallaf. So if you remember, when we study about the sifat ma'ani, we study about the ta'alluqat, the relation, correct or not? So if you go back to your notes in Kharida on the ta'alluqat, you will find there are three types of ta'alluq. We have, for example, ta'alluq tanjizi qadim. Then we have suluhiyun qadim. And then we have tanjiziyun hadis. These are the three types of ta'alluq of the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here he mentioned that hukmu shar'i, it is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is related to bi af'alil mukallafin. It is related to af'alil mukallafin. So this goes to say that this form of ta'alluq is tanjiziyun hadis. Correct? Now this form of kalam, ta'alluq of kalam, is tanjiziyun hadis. Because what you call it, tanjiziyun hadis, when it occurs. And the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tanjiziyun qadim, before the creation of human beings. For example, let me give you an example to make this clear, inshallah. We always give the example when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran wa aqimus salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran wa aqimus salah. This is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the meaning of wa aqimus salah? It is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to perform a particular action. And that particular action is prayers. That particular action is prayers. So we say that the relation of this kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, it is tanjiziyun qadim. Tanjiziyun qadim. Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternal, no issue. And then when we speak about suluhiyun qadim, we speak about the mukallaf. Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the mukallaf, this relation of the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the mukallaf, to human beings, it is suluhiyun qadim. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the mukallaf, then that relation, when this commandment is sent to the mukallaf, then it is tanjiziyun qadim. So this is basically the relation. So this kind of relation is related to the actions of human beings. So earlier when we gave the example wa aqimus salah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned establishing the prayers, so what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us to do is the action of prayers. The action of prayers. So this action of prayers has a relation with the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the meaning of hukm shari. So he said, huwa khitabullahi ta'ala al-muta'alliq bi-af'alil mukallafin. Yani it is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has relation with the actions of the mukallaf. And mukallaf, we know the meaning of mukallaf is a person who has reached puberty, a person who is sane, intellectual, possess any intellectual ability, and the da'wah of Islam has reached him. So this is a person who is a mukallaf. As for non-mukallaf, the commandments does not is not upon any non-mukallaf. The commandments are not upon the non-mukallaf. Why? Because any non-mukallaf they are not obliged. So for example, a small boy who has not reached puberty, for example, non-mukallaf. Likewise, a mad person is a non-mukallaf. And likewise, a person who lives in the jungle where nobody brings to him the teachings of Islam is also considered to be a non-mukallaf. So this is the meaning of mukallaf. So the khitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we say the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his commandments are only related to the actions of the mukallaf. Then this relation is divided into three parts. That's what you see in the definition. He said bitalabi awil ibahati awil wad'i lahuma. So we have number one, at-talab. Talab is a commandment. And then we have ibaha. Ibaha can be translated as is given the choice whether to do or not to do. And then number three, we have al-wada', situational. So we have the commandments, and then we have the choice, and then we have the situational form of commandments. So these are the three types of hukm shari. The three types of rulings within the hukum shari. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. Then the author goes on to speak about each of them. But before we go to each of them, I hope it is clear, inshallah. Hold on now. So now the author, before we go on to the three categories, what is important, at least we understand what is the definition of hukm shari. So whenever we use the word hukm shari, this is what it meant. Huwa khitabullah al-muta'alliq bi af'alil mukallafin. Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are related to the actions of the mukallaf. And then the three types, talab, ibaha, al-wada'. Then he mentioned وَيَدْخُلُ فِي الطَّلَبِ أَرْبَعَةٌ. So when it comes to talab, the commandment, there are four types. We have al-ijab, al-nadab, al-tahrim, and karaha. The commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, we have al-ijab. Al-ijab is an obligation. An obligation. Al-nadab is a recommendation. Tahrim is a prohibition. And karaha is offensive. Karaha is offensive. So then he goes on to speak about the definition of each of these terminology. So he says, فَالْإِجَابُ هُوَ طَلَبُ الْفِعْلِ طَلَبًا جَازِمًا. So when it comes to ijab, it is this commandment of obligation. And obligation, and he said, طَلَبُ الْفِعْلِ, it is a commandment to perform a particular action. Talaban jaziman. Talaban jaziman. Talaban jaziman, it means a commandment that is emphasized. A commandment that is emphasized. What is the meaning a commandment that is emphasized? It means that if you do not do it, there is a punishment. A commandment that is emphasized meaning if you do not do it, there is a punishment. So this is the meaning of wajib, al-ijab, the commandment based on obligation. Like what? And he said, kal imani billah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to believe in him, iman. So this is al-ijab. To believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wajib. Al-ijab is the commandment. Wajib is the ruling of the action. So to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wajib. To believe in the prophets, he said, Kal imani billah wa bi rusulihi wa ka kawaidil islamil khams. Just like the 5 pillars of Islam, to believe in Allah, believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to perform the prayers, to perform the zakah, to perform the hajj, and so on and so forth. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. So this is talaban jaziman. It is a command that is emphasized, and the meaning of command that is emphasized, there is a punishment if it is not performed. So this is number 1, al-ijab. And then he goes on to speak one nadbu. And nadbu is basically like what we usually say, is the sunnahs. And nadbu is the sunnahs. So in English we call it the recommended. One nadbu huwa talabul fi'li talaban ghayra jazim. So when we say something is a sunnah, it means it is a commandment from Allah, but it is not emphasized. A commandment that is not emphasized, meaning there is no punishment if it is not performed. So like what he said, kasalatil fajri wa nahwiha, like the sunnah of al-fajr. The sunnah of fajr. So please put this down. The sunnah of fajr is recommended, correct or not? It is recommended. So this is what the author meant. Likewise, when it comes to praying the duha prayers, praying the rawatib prayers, this is mandu. If you do it, you will get the rewards. If you do not do it, there is no punishment. And then we have the second part, that is what tahrim. Tahrim is the prohibition. Wa huwa talabul kaf anil fi'li talaban jaziman. So this is the opposite of al-ijab. Al-ijab is a commandment that is emphasized, for us to do an obligation. Whereas tahrim is the commandment to to prohibit ourselves from performing that particular action. And this commandment is emphasized. This commandment to not to perform that action is emphasized. Meaning if a person does it, there is a punishment. So it is what he said, wa huwa talabul kaffi anil fi'li talaban jaziman kashur bil khamri wa zina wa nahwiha. So he gave the example, kashur bil khamr, drinking liquor, performing the zina, and all this acts. So this is a kind of prohibition, a commandment of prohibition, and it is emphasized. Meaning if a person does it, there is a punishment. So this is meaning of tahrim. This is the meaning of tahrim. And then we have al-karaha. You say wal karahatu wa hiya talabul kaffi anil fi'li talaban ghayra jazim. Al-karaha, we say it is something that is makruh. Something that is makruh. What is the meaning of makruh? It is talabul kaf. Likewise, it is a commandment to prohibit. A commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell us of a prohibition. But this prohibition is not emphasized. It is not emphasized, meaning there is no punishment if a person does it. So kal qira'ati fi ruku', just like a person reciting the Quran in ruku'. This is makruh, because ruku' is a place not to recite the Quran. But if a person recite the Quran, it is makruh. Was sujud, to recite the Quran in the sujud, for example. So this is also something that is makruh. So this is the 4 types of at-talab. At-talab the commandment. So we have al-ijab, an-nadab. This is under the commanding of an action, and then we have tahrim and makruh and karaha, which is under the commandment of prohibiting an action. So one is emphasized, the other one is not emphasized. So when it comes to commandment of obligation that is emphasized is al-ijab. That is not emphasized is an-nadab. The command for prohibition, which is emphasized, is tahrim. Not emphasized, it is karaha. And then he goes on to speak about al-ibaha. So he says, wa amma al-ibahatu fahiya idhan fahiya idhnu shar'i fil fi'li wa tarki ma'an. So when it comes to ibaha, ibaha, like in Malay we call it mubah, in Arabic also we call it mubah. So he said this is the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fil fi'li wa tark. Whether we do something or we leave something. Both is permissible. So for example, when we speak about, for example, what is the hukum of bathing? We say bathing is mubah. It comes from ibaha. Bathing is mubah. Meaning what? Meaning you have the option whether to bathe or not to bathe. So if you bathe there is no reward. If you do not bathe there is no, there is no sin. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. So this is number 5. Wa ammal ibahatu fahiya idhnu shar'in fil fi'li wa tarki ma'an min ghayri tarjihin. So there is no preponderance. Whether you do or you do not do, you are given the choice. And there is no preponderance, in the author is saying. Min ghayri tarjihin li ahadihima ala al-akhar. Kal bai'i wa nikah. So he gave the example of buying and selling. Buying and selling is mubah. You can buy whatever you want as long as the thing is halal. So whether you buy or not, to buy. And then he also mentioned one nikah. Nikah at times getting married at times can be mubah. Can be mubah. Sometimes nikah can be sunnah. Sometimes nikah can be mubah. Nikah which is mubah for example, if a person, for example, he wants to marry another wife without any reason, for example, this is mubah in Islam. We call it mubah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, mentioned in the Quran when it comes to marrying any more than one, fankihu ma taba lakum minan nisa'i thalatha masna wa thulatha wa ruba'. It is permissible for you to marry woman more than 1, 2, 3 or 4. So this is an example. We say marrying which is mubah. Many a times marriage is a sunnah. It's a sunnah as based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Prophet mentioned the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam encourage people to get married. So sometimes any marriage can be wajib, and if a person says that if I do not get married I will perform any zina, and he has the capacity to get married, then marriage can be wajib. Otherwise it becomes a sunnah. But when it comes to some other situation, it can become mubah. And then the author mentioned wa ammal wad'u fa huwa ibaratun an nasbi shari'i amaratan tadullu ala hukmin min tilkal ahkam. Now he's going to speak about the third type. So we see here, when we look at the definition, huwa khitabullah al-muta'alliq bi af'alil mukallafin bi talabi awil ibahati awil wad'i. So we have covered number 1, talab, the commandment, and it's divided into 2 parts. One is jazim, the other one is not jazim. These are the 4 things, that we spoke about. And then al-ibaha, this is the choice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving to human beings, the mukallafin, whether to perform an action or not to perform the action. So now we are going to speak about the third one. So the author mentioned, as for the wada', this is the third type of hukum syari, based on the definition. So he said, huwa ibaratun an nasbi syari'i amaratan tadulu ala hukmin min tilkal ahkam. It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, syari' here meaning goes back into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah put certain conditions. Put certain conditions